There are fewer jobs out there, but paradoxically, there are more customers for your talent. And I was just wondering if $100 trillion economy with 4 billion jobs, new jobs that we don't know the contours of, are going to be created. How can I define, sitting here, what kind of jobs I'm going to go for? So the focus, and I'm going to talk on very briefly in the next 4 or 5 minutes, on 3 elements of what I consider to be the horizon of employment that is ostensibly the subject for this conversation. One is, if I do not know what those jobs are going to be 5 years from now, then it's best that I focus on not the ossified knowledge of the past, but knowability, which is what will make me relevant for the world, where jobs are going to churn up. So what's the difference between knowledge and knowability? Knowledge is that is already coded, classified, put in structures. And knowability is that extraordinary human capability which comes in the form of curiosity, adaptability, resilience, critical thinking. You will hear all of that with a whole galaxy of experts sitting here. So the first focus has to be to see what's happening in the job market itself. I was with a gentleman from Switzerland sitting there, and he has developed a model where he takes companies through a sequence of disruptions that a company is likely to face in lifespan of the next 10 years. A company that has been around for 100 years sees that it will face 5 new disruptions in its business model. So what the company will end up doing as a product will be very different from what it did for the last 100 years. Can you imagine what it means for the job world? It simply means even the CEO, the owners, the stakeholders of the company does not know what jobs will be redundant, what would be relevant. What they know, however, is whatever can be broken down into cause-effect relationships will be taken over by a machine. And it's the human world that will deal with the asymmetries of the universe of jobs, which means those jobs that cannot be coded or decoded in cause-effect relationships, which can't be done by a high-speed computer, will belong to the human domain. And this calls for creativity, innovation, ingenuity, which will be the focus of education, particularly higher education going forward as far as I can see. This leads me to the next thing, which is what kind of capabilities will educators and students in pursuit of jobs look for? And the word that comes to my mind is flexpertise. Expertise that is flexible enough to adapt to multiple environments and circumstances. So how does one develop leaders to acquire flexpertise? You know, when we were in school, we were asked by our parents in middle class West Bengal, where I grew up, to wear a sweater 1 size bigger than my size. The assumption was I will grow into the sweater or the pair of socks. And it's the same story about leadership. As a director of the Indian Institute of Management in Kozhikode, I'd given dean's roles to people who had no clue as to what the role of a dean was supposed to be. But you recognize that they had that energy, that ability to adapt. So when a prospective dean asked me, "Sir, will I really fit into this job? Will I be able to do it?" I said, "I don't really know." You have to grow into it. That's the only way that you can navigate a world whose contours you are not very sure about. And the word flexpertise also means that you have to develop new learning habits and new teaching habits. 30 of my professors co-taught a course on money. How money is created, how money is distributed. And then I came back to a realization that money was not what we had used to thinking for hundreds of years. We had a person who created Visa who said to me that money was human energy impulse that can be alphanumerically coded on a plastic card. And those impulses could be transmitted from one continent to another, provided there are 2 things behind the transmission process. One was trust, the other was value. Any institution that had trust and value could be called a bank. Now imagine your definition of a bank. Without buildings, without collaterals. What kind of capabilities do you need in a banker will depend on what the computer cannot really do. So flexpertise is the name. The third element, and I'm going to end with this one, because we have extraordinary voices that are waiting to be unleashed here. And please watch out for them because they have some great ideas. The last element is called freedom. are our institutions going to be fortresses of ossified knowledge, or are they going to be laboratories of living questions? Is the job of an institution to give you answers or to propagate the right questions? So the freedom to inquire, to challenge assumptions, even if they're hundreds of years old, is going to be the new game in higher education, the new name of the new game. So teachers will be a lot more like Zen masters rather than ring masters in a circus. Schools will be lot less like police lockups, a lot more like conversation hubs. How do we liberate the learner is going to be the real critical question for institutions of tomorrow. And I'm going to end with a story, as I always do, because stories remain when all theories have gone away. There's a little kid who has a nightmare. And he's not too good in school, but he has nightmares every night. And he says, there are two wolves fighting in my nightmare every night. One of them is dark, mean, crucifies me through marks and remarks. And there's another one which is white, angelic, very generous, makes me feel as I am. These two wolves are always fighting in my nightmare, in my dream. Tell me, grandma, which one is going to win? And the grandma, not the archetypal grandma, but the grandma who knows how to rear children, says, the one that will win will depend on the one that you feed the most. In our education world, there's a tussle for incumbency. The insurgents and the incumbents are in a tussle. The incumbents think like the IITs, IIMs. These are the faces of incumbency. Khan Academies, Super 50s are our insurgents. And in that dynamic tussle between incumbents and insurgency, the future of higher education is written somewhere. You have to decode and discover that, and the rest of the panel hopefully will help us in that process.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Is it clear? No. Yeah, it's on. I'll ask Syed Andalib to take the matter forward. Debashish has given us his insights.
First of all, thanks to Franchise India for inviting me. I'm coming all the way from Bangladesh to share some of my thoughts and experiences, if I may. I think the context is a little different, and therefore, but there may be some similarities that we will be sort of discussing. I think we all realize that the environment is very rapidly changing. So we understand the notion of changing demographics. We are dealing with evolving technology. The political systems are also under stress. Resource availability has been a constant challenge for us. And all of these lead to uncertainties that do not quite feed into the planning system as we would like it to be. I think importantly what we're doing at the university, and I just want to share some of my experiences, we see the university as the change makers of change makers. So if we can use that model, then at BRAC University we have identified actually 5 priorities that will enable us to do that, play that change maker role. The first thing we need is high quality teachers, those who will lead the system. And I can tell you that this is a huge challenge for us to build this particular resource. The second challenge we are fighting in Bangladesh is the notion of good quality students. So essentially what we have is a supply chain problem. So we do not get the type of students that would be able to meet the needs of education in a way that they could go out and serve industry. The third thing we need also is very high quality administration and management of these university systems. I think even today the universities are very stressed in the sense that many of them are not well trained. The fourth challenge is innovative programs. We just still stick to the old ways, the old programs, and therefore the resistance to change is often very high. So that's another place where we need to put in some work. And the fifth one is resources. I think our financial models are very weak. We depend largely on money from the students, from their tuition fees, but we really don't look out at all the other opportunities that are basically waiting out there. So in that context, I am seeing I've got a list of about 14 of these here, but I'm going to address only 3 priorities that I believe that need to be addressed. One of the things is leadership. Our academic institutions lack leadership. And I will tell you that in my 4 years as a Vice Chancellor, I've had the occasion to meet with quite a few Vice Chancellors. And I find 4 categories of Vice Chancellors. Some of them are very pensive, very thoughtful, but not much more action there. Pensive Vice Chancellors. In our context, I see a second kind of Vice Chancellor who are very submissive. The authorities tell them what to do and they do. The third kind of we see is the reactive Vice Chancellors who react to circumstances. And the fourth one that we need to build are the transformative Vice Chancellors. They're the ones, the leaders who could take the universities to new heights. So with this leadership in mind, what I really feel is that because the future is so uncertain, and I think the term used by the previous speaker was the whole idea of flexpertise. I use the term adaptability. Our students are the ones who really have to be adaptive. And to be adaptive, we can only teach them to be adaptive by driving them to the fundamentals. They really have to be very good in mathematics, in languages, in history, in some of the core elements that bring up the creative dimensions much more easily. So I think one of the things we're doing is to go straight down into the fundamentals and bring that up very solidly. The second thing I am really sensing is the lack of ethical values in the environment that we are in. And our students are somehow, even if we give them these ethical values in the system, as soon as they go out, they hit this new environment in which they quickly change and adapt themselves. And they begin to lose some of those things. So it is a constant tussle for me to figure out how we can ingrain these ethical values, because this is seemingly, in my 4 years in Bangladesh as Vice Chancellor, I'm beginning to see that this lack of ethical values is beginning to sort of destroy the fabric of society. And if I may say so, the last one I would address is, just like any organization, universities must internally train. I think our faculties, our administration must continuously engage in training themselves, whether it's in management of resources, whether it's in the skills of andragogy, how adults learn. I don't think we pay much attention to that. In fact, one of the biggest challenges I have is when I see faculty members resisting any notion of, when you ask them to train themselves in new methods of teaching, in new methods of engagement of students, in new methods of assessment, you find the first thing they say is resistance. They say that cannot be done. So we have, I think, there's a huge cultural transformation to be made in our academic institutions before we can even say that we are going to be able to prepare students. So we are really going back to the fundamentals and saying we got to get the fundamentals in place first. And I would stress ethical values very, very highly across the board, our education system, across whether it's engineering, whether it's business, whether it's any of the other disciplines. Please insist that they must ingrain and absorb ethical values. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to build the kind of society that we envision on a day-to-day basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Anil. Thank you very much. I think that's important, this business of leadership. I think that's a very, very important point you stressed here. Could I request Pratibha to speak her mind as she always does?
In the interest of time, let me speak from here. Sure. Thank you, Dinesh. Well, I come from what you could very well label as a traditional system in a large traditional university. But things are changing as we blink. And so I think it's very important for us to begin questioning nomenclatures. Miranda House is certainly a premier college, and it's a college for women. And our alumni list is extremely distinguished. So, you can call us as a legacy institution. So we must have done something rather well. And I do believe that what we've done well is that from inception, created in the spirit of liberal arts with very strong basic sciences, and nurturing young women to speak their mind and empower themselves to create a space for themselves in this world is what we did right. And I think that is what is a legacy that we need to take forward. Because even within institutions, to allow students to question the stereotypes and to evolve is very important. And in women institutions, you see the successful results rather quickly. So the benchmarks are there, and you have to keep raising the bar. Having been a student of that institution and having taught there for some time, however, let me say that I obviously not, having been one of those pioneering young students or faculty, look at things quite differently. So I saw what the traditional pitfalls were. So
and say, okay, I've got to find a voice. What if you come into an institution already with a voice, already with very advanced ways of thinking and having educated yourself and learned from peers and so on? Then for that generation, and that's the generation
we need to talk about today, you have to do things differently. See, even those legacy institutions have performed well, and in fact, much more those institutions had to reinvent themselves. So I, when came in as a faculty at Miranda House, I just was so bored with the traditional system. Then I said, I've got to fly the cuckoo's nest, and had an opportunity to quit a permanent job to take on contractual work to do what I wanted to do. And what I did was set up a lab of my own, or a lab for undergraduate students to come out of the traditional classroom and do things differently. And I did that for about 16 years. There were government schemes that allowed us to be different. And when I came back to lead the institutions, I think I walked that talk and worked that, create those spaces where you could work differently. But then the challenge becomes when you're in a leadership role and you have to also balance a traditional system, you have those exams to take care of, you have a certain curricula that's imposed on you, admission policies, however harebrained they may be, you have to innovate within that system. So you have to disrupt the system from inside, you have to subvert it, and what are the ways in which you can do it. So I think that is my story. And we have done that. Areas which have language challenge, they have communication skill challenge, and yet somehow, because we are masters at cracking examinations, we yet meet the high eligibility criteria, but them off. So what we are certainly doing is we are creating, we are identifying what is the new age requirement. For example, one is that we run courses such as rhetoric, rethinking the obvious. And since I'm a physicist, I like to pick up examples from the other side, rethinking about poverty, development, and so on and so forth. In the sciences, we're bringing in robotics. My cultural festival that begins next week has Future of Fun as its byline. And so we are actually looking for augmented reality, we are looking for artificial intelligence, machine learning, and throwing our students into the swimming pool of new challenges. That is important because I personally believe that governments or institutions today have only one role, which is to let people be. And let them find and evolve and find their own path. And that also means, therefore, that it's not the students who are going to be resistant. They are the critical mass that will show us the tipping point. My responsibility then and that of all of us is towards our faculty. Because teachers tend to teach how they were taught. They get caught in the rut far earlier, but now we have very young institutions, young people who are coming in, and therefore they have to be launched along a different trajectory. That which is research intensive, that which is in tune with the new age thinking and of future of learning, future of workplace, future of fun, and how do we integrate it? Because there are very few people who understand it all and who can integrate it. But the fun of it is that the pieces of jigsaw are all there. And I'm sure all of you are going to lay out those pieces of jigsaw. And from there, I have a great deal of optimism that given our vibrant, aspiring population from across the country, we are going to get there sooner than we think.
Thank you. Nice dose of optimism here. Subverting from within, the future of fun, and looking at teachers from a different perspective. So thank you so much, Pratibha. I now request Imran. Yeah, please take the mic.
Good morning. My association with Indian universities and higher education goes when I was after my 10th, I went to Aligarh Muslim University to do my +2 and then graduation. I was always fascinated by the diaspora Indian universities, and one of the first introduction to the ecosystem of the Indian universities was a book by the then Vice Chancellor of Punjab University, Mr. Amrik Singh. Later on, some commentators I also went through the books of commentators like David Lelyveld, Andre Betel, and now C. Rajkumar, who writes now on the future of Indian universities. So just I will take a few minutes of you to throw light on the checkered history of Indian universities. You all know that they were established around 1857, Calcutta, Bombay, the presidential universities, and they were only a degree conferring, examination conducting bodies. 1857 till 2007 or till 2010, we have traveled around 150 years, and the basic nature of Indian universities remain unaltered, they remain unchanged. What were these? They were never, they could never become a center for knowledge creation or for research, for say innovation, startup and all those things. They continued the role which was decided by the colonial government to confer degree, to confirm award, to confer, say, to conduct examination. There is also a huge discontent regarding the role of the university and its social responsibility, what you now call as a university social responsibility, USR. There has been a huge disjunction between what we teach in the university, what we study, learn in the university, and its implication with the society. In fact, huge scholarly articles I used to read that how there is hardly any worth the salt research work is done in Indian universities. Almost the entire funding is gone to the salaries and say pay fixation and increments of the teaching faculties. Undoubtedly, the teaching faculty, their problem has to be solved because they are the people who are mentoring our students, who are mentoring us. But if they are caught in the cobweb of pay revision and pay fixation, and if it is not solved, then they are bound not to discharge their functions. Apart from that, so the earlier problem of Indian universities, the access, quality, equity, relevance, excellence, They were there, these problems were there. Now, these problems have become exacerbated, they have become aggravated by the coming of new age technology, what two professors mentioned here, the Industrial Revolution 4 and Education Version 4. Now, the impact of these issues have to be taken into account. Our old problems have not been solved, and our new problems are rising. There are huge, you can say, there's a huge interstate and intra-state differences and variations in access of higher education. You have states like Telangana, you have states like Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, where the GER is, handsome 30%, and then there is a, what you can say, college population index is 50 or 40. But you have states like, say, Jharkhand, only 8. For every lakh population, there are only 8 colleges. Similarly, Bihar, similarly, Chhattisgarh. These are the educationally backward states. So the idea is to bring out some statistics so that you can, while we formulate policy, we have to be state specific. No one national model is going to work. For example, we are in National Capital Territory, Delhi. In Delhi, the migration of students from other states, out of 100 students, 97 students are from other states. But in Chhattisgarh, there is not even a single student from other states. Majority of the migration for education is from rural area to the urban areas. In Jharkhand, what happens that we have a GR of say 15 and we have a college population index of only 8. There is a huge migration of students from the rural areas, the travel pockets, from backward areas to some of the pockets of education like Ranchi, Jamshedpur and Bokaro. So we have to look into all those things. Apart from the old problems, our new problems have come. The first and foremost, we need to identify, we need to focus on what is the aim of education. Is it employability, or is it knowledge creation or research? Or we need to differentiate institutions into different categories. The institutions which could be used for research, the institutions which could be used for basic career and basic development of personality, like you have these institutions coming out like Shiv Nadar and Ashoka and liberal, which are fusing the liberal arts education with your modern courses and with your modern pedagogical skills. Now, as far as employability is concerned, because this Indian Education Congress, I listened to the organizer of this Congress yesterday, and she used the word education industry. There was a time where which we have to ponder. There was a time way back in 2002 when Ambani Birla report came, and it said that education should be made an industry or should be made a commodity. What does we mean by it? Do we mean that there should be proper investment like we have industry, and the founders, the investors should be allowed a guaranteed interest or return or dividend? So apart from these things, now the question of employability. If you go through the survey, I was reading this professor of education and philosopher, World Economic Forum. He said when he came out with these articles, Future of Jobs, in 2015-16. So these, I was startled and I was thinking, this led me to thinking, we are working for job and the future of jobs is changing. Our employability, if you go by one survey, that out of every year we have 6 million graduates. Out of 6 million graduates, we have 25% engineers and rest in accountancy, MBA. Employability is only 7 to 8% or at most to 10%. No, our chunk, major chunk, 93% of our graduates, they are doing MBA, they are doing BTech, they are unemployed. Because apart from the domain knowledge, we are also lacking in soft skill and all those things. So time is short. We must focus on employability, the Industrial Revolution 4, the use of technology, the disruptors, which this Congress has been deliberating upon. And I wish all you best the seminar journey. But I would like to conclude with a quotation from Jawaharlal Nehru, because he was very much fond of universities, and he was the person who used to attend large number of convocation. In one of the convocation in Allahabad, he said, if all is well with the university, all will be well with the nation and the society. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Imran, for enlightening us on what is or what should be education and this issue of employability. Well, our final speaker is Arvind, and we look forward to hearing what Arvind has to say. Are you going to speak from here, Arvind? Okay, thank you.
So, thank you very much. It's truly a pleasure to be here in front of you and sitting with some of the stalwarts in the education. I don't come from I'm not an educationist, I'm not an academician. So my background is that, after my PhD, I went abroad, worked in multinational companies, worked in Indian companies, built a startup in Delhi, and worked with the chairmen of the companies and so on. So I took a break from the corporate career. After some time you feel that, enough is enough in the corporate. Let's do something very interesting outside of the corporate world. So let me share my thoughts, what needs to be changed in higher education and why the change is required. Let's look at India. In India, we need 300 million jobs in next 30 years, which means that we need to create 10 million jobs every year. What is the absorption capacity of our Indian businesses and the government? Hardly, I think, 25% of what is required, which means that 75% of the 10 million youth may or may not have a job. So and imagine if this cumulative 7 million youth continues for the next 10 years, imagine the kind of things can happen in a nation. Let's look at, industry. Now, when I talk to the industry, chairmen of the companies, senior leaders, CEOs and MDs, they are saying that the kind of changes that are happening in the technology and in the industry, most of the middle management and most of the so-called good talent that is coming out is not relevant today for the industry. So one side, the industry is saying that, like IT industry, for example, which used to give a lot of jobs, saying that we cannot absorb, and now is saying that those, even though it is a great talent, we cannot absorb. So that's a very interesting change that we see in the industry. The third is, because of the technology, the AI, robotics, automation, and so on, the kind of skills that are required to get a job are very different. Recently, World Economic Forum did a survey of top 10 skills required in 2020 and compared with 2015. And you were surprised that the top 3 skills that are required are problem solving, critical thinking, and creativity. And creativity was number 10. Then, of course, in the list in 2020 is emotional intelligence, cognitive flexibility, and so on. And if I look at the higher education, we are not creating the talent which meets the kind of skills that are required for the future. So now, having said this, what is the solution then? How one should look at higher education of the future? Our higher education of the future is basically molded for a placement or a job. And that model has to be changed. So, as a solution, what we did recently, I had a privilege to design a course for MBA, which is MBA in Innovation Entrepreneurship. The uniqueness of this course is that a student who joins for this MBA course does not get a job, no placement. That's the number one. And second thing is that it has to be experiential, because we are discussing about the teaching, but innovation and entrepreneurship cannot be taught just sitting in a classroom. It has to be, we have to shift from teaching to learning, and that learning cannot happen just in the classroom, but it has to be experiential learning. And to become an entrepreneur, an innovator, it cannot be just an experiential learning. It has to be inspired experiential learning, because there are people, students around who are looking for a job. And this whole 2-year course is designed now, not the job seekers, but job creators. And in the last 4 years, we have seen that there is such a demand for this kind of a course that we had 5,000 applications for 40 seats. And when we select the first 40, all the 40 students join. So there is no wait list. Even somebody who is 41st may not get a seat to study in this. So very, very interesting. So the whole curriculum is focused on finding the problem, finding the solution, designing and prototyping the solution, and implementing in the real market. And Thus, you create a new venture and create a new job and create a wealth for the society, for the company, and also make a social impact. I think this is what is going to bring the change. So the shift of the higher education has to be not educational institution will not or should not be focused on job givers, but we have to see that we create a talent, we create a youth which will create more and more jobs. I think that will shift. There will be a tremendous shift in the way the education is imparted and the way we deal with the current and future challenges. So I did another experiment, in other parts of the other parts of the state, where what we did was after 12th standard, we picked up some of the students who couldn't go for a higher education. They are poor from a very rural India, and if they go through 1 year of education, where the first 6 months is all about basics, basics about how to lead a life, to hygiene, to even just written and oral communication and productivity tools like, learn Word and PowerPoint and so on. And after that, there is a whole new methodology was developed, how to learn anything that you want to learn. And that's the future I think we need to focus on. And today our education system does not teach us how to learn and learn new things. And the experiment was that the 10 students, after 1 year, they went for an interview with Texas Instruments, Cadence and ARM, because 6 months they went through embedded system and that kind of a training, and they learned by themselves. There were engineering students from IITs, VIT, BIT, and these are the 10 students from a rural India with 1 year of training after 12, and they went through the same interview of a Texas Instruments. All 10 students got selected, but many engineers did not get selected, and teaches us something very important, that we need to teach our students how to learn anything and everything, because the world is changing very fast. What you learn today is not going to be relevant tomorrow and day after tomorrow. And that's where I see the future of education should focus, and then I'm sure we will be able to deal with the future challenge. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Arvind. I think with your innovative approach on innovation and this business of paradigm shift from job seekers to job creators, and this insight about learning to learn. Thank you very much for that. Well, my job has been made very easy. Before I throw the floor open, I hope you will allow me to indulge myself for a couple of minutes. I'm not going to take too much time. But as I have understood what my distinguished colleagues, predecessors who spoke here, I'd like to quickly summarize in my own words what I think is the issue at hand. I think we need to understand very clearly what is education. Education, to my mind, has a simple definition. It is a search of the self. ये अंतरात्मा की खोज है और कुछ नहीं है एजुकेशन की परिभाषा. और मुझे कभी-कभी लगता है कि एनलाइटनमेंट उसी से आता है. तो आप लोगों को अंधेरे में क्यों रखा है मैं नहीं जानता. शायद पीछे के लोग सो जाएंगे आसानी से. But you should allow enlightenment everywhere, including in this room. Leave that aside. If that is the purpose of education, then the challenge is, how do you allow every individual to be able to search his or her inner drumbeat? अंतरात्मा की ध्वनि, अंतर्ध्वनि क्या कहती है, उसको पकड़ लीजिए तो आप प्रशिक्षित होने लगेंगे. जैसे गौतम बुद्ध ने पकड़ा था, या महात्मा गांधी ने सत्य को पकड़ा था, या सचिन तेंदुलकर ने क्रिकेट को पकड़ा था, या अमिताभ बच्चन ने एक्टिंग को पकड़ा था, या रामानुजन ने मैथमेटिक्स को पकड़ा था. The challenge is to allow individuals collectively or in institutions or in such situations to be able to do that. And as little as I've understood, there are 2 or 3 ways of figuring some ideas. If I had all the answers, I wouldn't be talking to you here. मैं तो कहीं पहाड़ पे गुफा में गुरु बन के बैठा होता. I don't have the answers, but I have some pointers. The one thing that gives us great insight is to look at why India, was so successful over the centuries before we came under colonial rule. And successful in every sense of the term, not just economically successful, that we were. If you look at Angus Madison's Economic History of the World, where he records data from the 1st to the 17th century, India dominated global GDP. Why? Because it was a knowledge economy. Knowledge economy, knowledge systems were connected to the economy. Therefore, the first lesson that I seem to imbibe is that educational institutions, and more importantly, educational culture, must be connected to the needs and challenges of the nation and of society. That inspires young minds to look at these problems, to look at these needs, and then something within them resonates with a particular need or a particular challenge. As Ramanujan did with mathematics or Tendulkar with cricket. And then we begin to find our path. But remember, this journey never ends. It's a journey of education for your whole life. So as some of my distinguished colleagues said, you must learn to learn. You can keep learning your whole life. Ramakrishna Paramhans, whom Gandhiji, the father of the nation, called a living God, what does he say? So long as I live, I learn. Ghalib said the same thing. Jana ki kuch na jana, wah bhi ek umr mein. तो पहली चीज तो हम समझ ले कि जरूरत से ज्यादा ठूसिए मत, चाहे कोई भी सिस्टम हो. The other learnings, and again large number of these learnings come from two sources for me. India's own past, where we were so successful, and some of the great personalities that I have admired, whether it was Guru Nanak, whether it was Mahatma Gandhi, whether it was Isaac Newton. What is it that I learned? Besides this business of engaging with the needs and challenges, you must be very good with your hands. Our systems of education have become ossified blackboard learning. We need to get out of that. India's past was not like this, and I will give you a very quick illustration. I don't have more time. If you look at the Chandogya Upanishad, there's this lovely story about this boy who goes to seek admission into the Gurukul of Gautam Haridrumat. And when he goes there, Haridrumat says, tell me, what is your lineage? We admit only Brahmins. And the boy says, I asked this question of my mother before I came here. And my mother said, I have worked as a maid in many homes. Many men took advantage of me. I have no idea who your father is. My name is Jabala, yours is Satyakam. Tell them that truthfully. And then Haridrumat says, son, I admit you because that is the only hallmark of a Brahman. Adherence to truth. So let educational systems recognize that that truth which is within you must somehow be allowed to flower. But now comes the real lesson. Haridrumat doesn't tell him, come sit here and memorize the Vedas. He gives him a hands-on project, this business of hands. He gives him 60 head of cattle and says, go into the forest and do not come back until they have multiplied so many fold. This is a hands-on project. You need to figure this out. This business of engaging with the real world. And Satyakam becomes enlightened when he returns after the cattle have multiplied so many fold. He's already beginning to get educated. So you must understand this. The other thing is this business of transdisciplinarity. We are so isolated in our own silos. Mathematics है तो सिर्फ mathematics करेंगे. Newton ऐसे नहीं थे, Einstein ऐसे नहीं थे. They were all connected to the real world and they were transdisciplinary. In India, deep mathematics came out of Sanskrit poetry. Chomsky became Chomsky because he knew Sanskrit, grammar, and he knew mathematics, and so he created a revolution in linguistics. And finally, let me tell you, the sole objective for searching of your inner drumbeat should be to change your mindset. And then you will be able to cope with the new challenges of artificial intelligence, robotics, etc., etc., if your mindsets have changed. And these are major challenges. The Indian economy is going to be overwhelmed with artificial intelligence and robotics coming to us from other countries. So how do our young, and young at mind and heart, forget age otherwise, they have to be taught to cope. So I'm reminded of Kabir. It's a mindset. Mala kahe kaat ki tu kyun phere moy. Manka pher le turat mila du toy. That's what you need to do in education. Thank you very much. I now throw the floor open for any questions or comments, but one simple request. Be very brief and pointed, and please, I beg of you, we have little time, don't make long speeches. Go ahead. Is there a mic here which someone can take? Please. Is there someone with a mic? We need some 100-meter dashers here to take the mic quickly.
A very good morning to all present. It was absolutely enlightening to hear words of wisdom. Being an educationist, there's always a dilemma. You know, as you grow, you initially in a position of power, initially you become, you start adopting diplomacy, then finally at an age you start feeling that whatever you're preaching is exactly not what you feel. You're telling a child, go ahead, follow your passion in class 9th. Then they take the stream, commerce, science, and humanities. Then in class 12, you don't have a heart to actually tell them what exactly, how to go about with life. Then you check out graphs and numbers and see the relative scores, and you tell whatever you're telling a child is exactly, you don't agree with that, but then you go ahead because you're in a position and system wants you to say that. So just as an educationist, if a class 12 child comes to you, all of you, and asks you this question, how to go about with life after 12, when I'm very good with fine arts, but I'm amazing with maths, and my dad wants to be, for me to crack the JEE examination, and you know that child can, in 2 minutes can replicate a photograph. Then you say, go ahead with numbers, follow, then later on follow your passion.
So your question is pretty clear. I think we got your question.
Class
Sorry to
12.
interrupt. Yeah. Pratibha, do you want to answer that question?
You know, this question seems anachronous to me now. Gone are those days when, you know, when we were growing up and the silos were so well defined. We are doctor, engineer, banker, Today, you look at the job opportunities outside. So it is about building portfolios. And the opportunities for nurturing talent in diverse fields are so huge. So I simply always, we have set up project-based learning. And already, I think you said that interdisciplinarity is so important. So all institutions today are giving enough opportunities. And when you go into the employment world, is what you can do that matters. Your degree ultimately does not matter at all. And the young have caught on. Society has to follow suit. Society in the sense parents and others have to follow suit. It's your portfolio and your early achievements that will define the path you follow.
Thank you, Pratibha. And you can follow up with the speakers later. The next question, we'll come to you, madam. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much for a really inspiring
Keep the mic closer to you.
Yeah, thank you very much for excellent, inspiring panel. What I wanted to say was, of course, we understand the various points that everybody's made. And I think bottom line really is that there needs to be a systemic change in India. So systemic meaning, just what you also mentioned, Pratibha, the parents, right? So from parents on to the school system, and then to the university system and to the jobs. Like, what are the expectations of everybody? I think we are trying to cater to different things in a very piecemeal fashion, whereas really it needs to be a systemic change. So if we need creativity, it's problem solving and all that we are wanting to develop. And I agree wholeheartedly with the schools, the children in the schools. Then, what do we do with the 90% and the 95% and the 88? I mean, the goal of parents is, wo 99% leke aao. And the goal of the teachers is also that. Many places.
Parents को मना कीजिए साहब, इस तरह से रेस में न जाया करें. I don't think you should allow parents to do that. मुझे नहीं मालूम कि गांधी जी किस यूनिवर्सिटी में गए थे, नंबर लाने की तो बात ही नहीं. रामानुजन के पास कोई यूनिवर्सिटी डिग्री नहीं थी. परंतु मैं ये नहीं कह रहा हूं कि आप सिस्टम में न जाइए. I think campuses and education have to be redefined. Create the whole world as a sort of enlightened and large campus. and then try and see how redefining education allows each child to find a path. Not an easy thing, but we can try.
Not an easy thing, exactly.
Thank you very much. Yes, please, can we pass the mic on?
Good morning, everybody. My question from Professor Dinesh. When we know that in India, our experiment with knowing the self of the schools of J. Krishnamurti Foundation and Shri Aurobindo Foundation are failing, they've been compelled to go to CBSE or board system. Where do you see the future? Thank you so much.
So sorry, your question was that?
My question is that know thyself is the greatest education, and I agree with you. But in India, we have forced the foundations like J. Krishnamurti and Shri Aurobindo School Foundation chain to go to the CBSE system, which they never wanted to earlier. So where do we see the future of knowing the self and on mass scale giving that education?
Get your point. I get your point. Thank you. I get your question that if you want to do what I think I seem to advocate over here, will a CBSE system allow you? Maybe not. But my point is, don't look at this journey of education just something that will come only through a CBSE system. You have to go out of it. And in any case, better systems are already being evolved and thought of and being put into practice. So let's remain optimistic and let's all collectively apply our experiences and wisdom to create these more enlightened systems. Okay? Thank you. Yes, there's this gentleman at the... Oh, yeah, go ahead, please. Yeah.
Okay, good morning, panel and the guests here. My question is related to, and it's very basic, related to the delivery in the classroom. So typically that we have witnessed, and especially having passed out from IIT Roorkee and joined a company which was based out of Europe, we were straight away on the very first day given a statement that you own your own growth, you own your own path, you have to decide your goals, and there will be just a mentor who will give us. So a very clear sense of direction setting and a thinking about what you want to do, which was pretty much missing during my days in the college. But very soon I figured out I am, for instance, do teach in a case-based study. So they assign a particular problem in the evening and make students just read that, and next day they don't talk theory, so there is no theory session, but instead there's only interaction that happens over the real problems. And so the same system, can we not really now, especially with the advent of technology, the blended teaching scenario can be implemented within the classrooms across every university? Can we not and that's something which can work as a hygiene for every other student to start thinking on his own, what are the key outcomes that he is looking forward to from this particular topic that is being taught. And so in a way we may end up having a variety of problems to be solved. Instead of a teacher being a sage on the stage, we can somewhere give him an opportunity to spend time with the students, understand what their understandings are, what all different backgrounds that they're coming in, problems that they are throwing into the classroom, and for the benefit of rest of the students.
Okay, thank you. Would anybody want to comment on this? No? Debashish, go ahead, please. Take your mic. Yeah.
As far as I could make out from whatever little I gathered from your question, that a case mode of teaching the IM system is why don't schools look at it. The point is that any method of teaching is about enlarging the horizon of perception, and perception is inside. Dinesh was right, and he said the world of perception has to be enhanced. You have a cup of tea, and if you look at a cup of tea, it is nothing but photons of light falling on green leaves. You're drinking light. You mix that with a little bit of a fluid that a black cow eating green grass produces. You call that milk. You mix this with the sap of the earth, which a sugarcane, a pump called a sugarcane produces, and the mixture is called chai. The question is, chai is not just in the cup. Chai is an ecological event. You go to an IIT classroom and they'll have a cell phone. And they'll say, let's start a class on what a cell phone, what a smartphone is all about. And then you see the entire laws of physics, chemistry, biology. So there are modes and methods of teaching that simply does this. It enhances your view of reality, and actually it enhances you as an individual. That's where real learning takes place. Learning is expansion of the self. And if that happens, then real learning has happened. Otherwise, it's just information gathering.
Thank you, Debashish. We'll take just one more question. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Running out of time.
Yeah, good afternoon. Mine is a very short one,
okay.
Sir. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Manohar, a principal in a K2 Square 12 school. And my question is very specific to Professor Arvind. Sir, it's really innovative measures you adopted in Symbiosis University. But being a principal of a K 12 school, I have a question that can you please suggest the ways for integration of innovation in schools for entrepreneurial perspective?
Arvind, education, innovation, how do you teach that in schools? Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the question.
So, unfortunately, we are not able to hear properly because of the acoustics. So, how do we teach creativity, innovation, entrepreneurship in our schools? So, just as an illustration, if you look at how Montessori's education works, right, exists, where child is given all possible options, themes to work on, sitting, the child is experimenting, child is combining certain things, creating certain things. Teacher is not telling what to create, what not to create, how to create. So this is the fundamental difference when it comes to the teaching of creativity. So one of the points I wanted to share was, look at our higher education. Our higher education is exactly opposite of what our Montessori kindergarten education is all about, where we basically kill the innate ability of being curious, being creative, and being innovative, and so on. So, I mean, I can go on telling because I have done a lot of experiments on this. But let me tell you another thing. What is missing in our education system? In our education system, we have somehow ensured that we don't question the status quo. So to be creative, to be innovative, I need to be questioning each and everything. And where does this come from? So it comes from, our system and also our culture. So just to give, the cultural part, we say, Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Deva, Maheshwara. What it means, now as a child, what I'm imbibed is whatever is being told by my senior, my father, or my guru is ultimate truth. It need not be. That's a one. Second thing, our education system makes our students in a way where asking a question is a job of a teacher and answering is a job of a student. And that basically kills very basic ability of being creative, because the creativity you need to keep asking. The third and last, I will stop here. As a parent, if a child comes to us, what is it that we ask our child? We said, how many answers you gave to a question? But there is no parent today where the parent is asking, how many questions did you ask to the teacher? So now when I say this is for students, it is equally true for our working professionals. If you ask working professionals, how many questions did you ask? Do you have a journal of questions? We talk about brainstorming, finding solution. So solution is easy, but asking the right question is very important. And Einstein made it very important. Important is asking the right question. So I'm just giving you some illustrations. And this can happen only through experience and through varied multidisciplinary thing. Going out of the room and many other things. I think I can share, later. Thanks.
Thank you, Arvind. I'm sorry we've run out of time. I've got a lady at the back with a whip. So what we can talk to our panelists after, we can talk outside also. But I want you to join me in thanking the panelists for such an enlightening session. Thank you very much.
Hope you had a fruitful interaction with our eminent speakers. We'll now like to thank them by presenting mementos. I request Honorable Session Moderator, Professor Dinesh Singh, to please present memento to Mr. Abu Imran. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for Mr. Abu Imran. IAS Director, Higher Education, Government of Jharkhand. Thank you so much, sir. Dr. Andaleep, Vice Chancellor, BRAAC University, Bangladesh. Kindly keep the applause going, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so very much, Dr. Andaleep. Mr. Arvind, Chair Professor of Innovation and Entrepreneurship, Symbiosis University, Pune. Thank you so much, sir. Mr. Debashish Chatterjee, Author, Director General, International Management Institute. Thank you so much, sir. Dr. Pratibha Chawli, Principal, Miranda House, Delhi University. Thank you so very much, ma'am. I request Ms. Pritima from Franchise India to quickly join me on stage and present memento to our Honorable Session Moderator, Professor Dinesh Singh, Vice Chancellor, Pro-Vice Chancellor, University of Delhi. Thank you so much. And a big hand for all the speakers, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so very much for joining us this morning. All right, let's quickly start the next session, which is on reimagining education, new perspectives and new paradigms. And the gentleman who will take this session, ladies and gentlemen, is armed with 3 postgraduate qualifications in HRM, Business Administration, and Administrative Law.